The moment Representative Pramila Jayapal leaned in and asked a simple yes or no question, the entire room shifted. It wasn't the kind of political back and forth people tune out. It was the kind of moment where you could feel the air tighten, the kind where everyone watching knew something was about to break. Because when a powerful official is confronted with a truth they don't want to say out loud, silence becomes louder than any answer. And that is exactly what happened when the Epstein files came up. Not rumors, not speculation, but real survivors, real evidence, and a system that suddenly slammed a door shut right after promising full transparency.
Questions recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, before you joined the FBI, you had very strong opinions about what the FBI was hiding regarding Jeffrey Epstein. In a September 2023 interview with Glenn Beck, you said the Black Book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. In December 2023, you said, let us know who the pedophiles are. Even for a short time after becoming FBI director, in February of 2025, you tweeted, quote, there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned. In June, you told Joe Rogan, quote, we've reviewed all the information, we're gonna give you every single thing we have and can. But then suddenly in July, everything changed. You and Attorney General Pam Bondi released one video and said that there was nothing more to see. Your July memo says you uncovered more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence, but that you had decided no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. That is a quote. I think what happened, Mr. Patel, is that suddenly you discovered that Donald Trump's name was all over these files, and you started a giant cover-up. So you are under oath, Mr. Patel. You just testified to Mr. Swalwell that you did not speak to the president about the Epstein files. To your knowledge, did Attorney General Pam Bondi speak to the president about what was in the Epstein files?
I can't speak for Attorney General Pam Bondi.
So to your knowledge, you don't have any information. The question was, do you have any knowledge? Do you have any knowledge?
I can't speak.
You are refusing to answer the question, so let me tell you that the Wall Street Journal reported that in May, Bondi told Trump that he was in the Epstein files, and at the same meeting said that the DOJ did not plan to release the files. Yesterday, you testified to Senator Kennedy that there was, quote, no credible information that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone else, and that you have, quote, continuously and publicly asked the public to come forward with more information, and we'll look into it. Today, in response to Mr. Massey's question, you appear to say that the survivors were not credible. These are survivors.
That's not at all what I said.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask you this in a second, but let me tell you about the survivors, and let's bring them up here into the room. These are women who came to the Hill and testified that they were groomed and raped at the age of 14 and 16 years old, and they called to meet with the president and to meet with the FBI and to have people investigate their claims. Some of them have never testified before. If you are so interested in getting the public to submit any information, why have you not met with them? You said you haven't met with them. Have you met with them? I'll give you one more chance.
My job as the FBI director is to invite
Is
all
the answer yes or no
leads
to whether or not you met with these women who were sexually abused and raped?
Any insinuation by you or any people on your side that I am not manhunting child predators and sex traffickers, just look at the stats.
Patel,
and you talk about cover-ups, man.
Mr. Chairman,
you talk about cover-ups.
And I will take as much time as I
Where
want.
were you during the
Instruct
Obama
the
and Biden
witness,
administrations when these so-called cover-ups were going on? Why didn't anyone in those administrations talk to any of these purported witnesses? I have
some regular order,
every single person to provide credible information.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Washington.
And I'm going to take another couple of minutes.
When you accuse the witness of something, he's allowed to respond. That's how it works.
Listen, he didn't even, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you have always been fair, but this is not fair.
And you will get
no, this is my time, and he said that the witnesses were not credible.
Seconds of time.
I'm going to get an additional minute of time because that's how much time he took.
You won't get a minute. You'll get some seconds. What we think is under 5 minutes. You don't get to demand how much time you get. That's not how it works.
Mr. Patel, are the victims of the Jeffrey Epstein horrific trafficking ring, are they credible?
any person with information about ongoing sexual trafficking.
I'm asking you if they're credible.
Ma'am, I'm commenting on the evidence we have.
But
we have routinely asked for people to come forward with more evidence, and we will look at it. And the evidence that we have was the same evidence that the Biden and Obama Justice Departments had. And they determined, not me, they determined that information was not credible.
Chairman, he's not letting me even ask my questions.
You ask the questions, he gives an answer. You may not like what he says, but that doesn't mean you get to interrupt him.
He's not answering my question.
Mr. Chairman, could we restore the gentlelady 45 seconds so she can complete her question?
We will give her additional 30 seconds, which is what I said earlier.
I'm going to keep taking my time. Because
no, you'll take the time that you get.
You are not answering the question. The question is,
you just don't like the answer.
Are these women credible? It's a yes or no answer.
I have answered the question.
Well,
and
what is the answer?
I keep telling you, I'm the only FBI director that has welcomed new information in this case. This administration is the only one that has welcomed any new information in this case.
Is there a yes or no to
present
whether the
new
victims
credible
are
information?
credible?
Present new information.
Are the victims credible or not?
I'll tell you what happened in the last Trump administration.
Are they credible or not? You can't even say.
Victims credibly came forward, and you know what happened? President Trump authorized the indictments of Jeffrey Epstein.
Called them
not Biden,
a hoax.
not Obama.
President Trump
no one else.
called the entire thing a Democratic hoax. So I would like to ask
you. The gentlelady's time has expired. I gave her the additional 45 seconds she requested. The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for his 5 minutes.
If you would meet with the women who were sexually abused and raped and groomed at the ages of 14 and 16 years old. Are you going to cover up? Are you going to continue to cover up for the rich and powerful men, including those that might be on this committee?
I can yell too, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to yell above this.
The time belongs to the gentleman from New Jersey. I appreciate the gentlelady yielding back.
Are you going to allow them to testify, Mr. Patel?
Go ahead.
Will you allow them to testify to you, Mr. Patel?
Mr. Patel, thank you for being here. I know it's been an interesting and difficult 2 days. And I wasn't going to talk about the Epstein thing because there's a lot of other issues that affect the FBI, but I have to say a few words. I've sat.
What you're about to hear isn't just another heated exchange. It's the moment a cover story cracked open on national television. Jayapal didn't walk into that hearing looking for a fight. She walked in looking for answers. Direct, clear, undeniable answers. And she started with the question that mattered more than any talking point. Did anyone in the administration speak with the president about the Epstein evidence? A straightforward question. A question any honest public servant could answer in seconds. But Patel froze. He dodged. He twisted. He repeated nothing. He wouldn't say yes. He wouldn't say no. And the silence that filled the room said far more than any admission could. It was the first signal that something deeper was being protected, something no one wanted spoken aloud in that room. Jayapal saw it immediately. And she wasn't going to let it go. The reason that question mattered so much goes back to a report that shook Washington months earlier. According to journalists digging into the case, the Attorney General had allegedly informed a high-profile political figure, a former president, that his name appeared in the Epstein files. And in that same conversation, she allegedly said the Justice Department didn't plan to release the rest of the documents. Not because they were empty, not because there was nothing left to share, but because keeping them sealed might protect certain people involved. That allegation didn't come from fringe corners of the internet. It came from reputable reporters who had been following the story for years. And once that detail surfaced, the narrative inside the DOJ changed overnight. Suddenly, the message went from full transparency to there's nothing more to see. No explanation, no justification, just a door slammed shut. That's why Jayapal pressed Patel so hard. Because you don't go from uncovering over 300 gigabytes of new data to declaring that none of it is worth disclosing unless something inside those files changes everything. The public didn't know what changed. Survivors didn't know what changed. But someone knew. And that's why Jayapal repeated her question over and over, refusing to let him slip away behind bureaucratic fog. But instead of answering, Patel ducked, stalled, and reached for anything that would shift the spotlight away from him. It wasn't working. She kept pushing, and the cracks kept widening. What made this moment so explosive wasn't just the political tension. It was the human reality behind the questions. These weren't abstract files or anonymous claims. These were the stories of real girls, now adult women, who had come forward describing how they were groomed, exploited, and silenced at ages 14 and 16. Some of them had never spoken publicly before. Some traveled to Washington hoping someone in power would finally listen, finally investigate, finally treat them as witnesses instead of inconvenient debris. They weren't asking for fame. They weren't asking for money. They were begging for justice. And yet Patel, who publicly claimed he wanted the public to bring forward information, refused to meet with them. Not one meeting, not one conversation, not even a moment of acknowledgement. Jayapal didn't let him hide from that either. She brought their voices into the room, reminding Patel in front of the entire committee that he had openly said he wanted new information, yet ignored the very survivors who had it. She asked him again, plainly, "Have you met with them?" And again, he refused to give a yes or no. Instead, he launched into statistics, deflections, comparisons, and anything else that didn't answer the question. The more he dodged, the more obvious it became that something was terribly off. It wasn't just about avoiding responsibility. It was about avoiding the truth those survivors carried. Then came the moment that turned the hearing electric. Jayapal asked the question no official wants to answer if they're trying to protect someone. Are the victims credible? A simple question, a moral question, a question that required only honesty. And Patel still would not say it. He kept returning to the same rehearsed line, that he was welcoming any new information, that previous administrations had also found the evidence not credible, that this wasn't his burden to resolve. But to everyone watching, his refusal to say the victims were credible said something far more damning. Because acknowledging their credibility would open the door to accountability. And accountability would lead right back to the people with the most to lose if the truth came out. That's why he danced around it. That's why he stalled. That's why he kept reaching for old political names and old administrations. He didn't want to talk about the present because the present held the danger. Jayapal didn't let him escape. The more he dodged, the sharper her questions became. She wasn't raising her voice for theatrics. She was raising her voice because evasiveness has always been the language of cover-ups. When the truth is safe, officials answer. When the truth threatens power, they hide behind procedure and deflection. And Patel was hiding behind everything he could find. His strategy became obvious. Blame previous administrations, bury the question under procedural confusion, accuse the other side of partisanship, anything to avoid the simple words that survivors deserve to hear. The longer it went on, the clearer the pattern became. That's when the room erupted. Committee members interrupted each other. Chairs argued over who had time, who didn't, who was allowed to speak, who wasn't. Voices overlapped, rules were bent, tempers flared. The entire hearing devolved into chaos, not because Jayapal did anything wrong, but because the tension in the room was exposing something no one wanted on the record. The more she pressed for clarity, the more the system itself seemed to resist, as if transparency had suddenly become a threat. And maybe it was. When powerful names appear in sealed files, confusion becomes a shield. When survivors demand answers, silence becomes a weapon. But Jayapal stood her ground. Even in the middle of shouting and interruptions, she held on to the central truth, that these survivors deserved more than political spin. They deserved justice. They deserved recognition. And above all, they deserved answers from the people who promised they would leave no stone unturned. Instead, they got a stone wall, a carefully constructed one, a wall built out of evasions, omissions, and strategically chosen silences. The deeper issue became impossible to ignore. This hearing wasn't just about one official or one memo or one set of sealed files. It was about the very principle of justice, whether it protects the vulnerable or shields the powerful. When an investigation promises sunlight but delivers darkness, something is very wrong. When survivors step forward and the response is silence, something is very wrong. When a system claims to prioritize truth but reacts with panic when a name inside a file becomes politically inconvenient, something is very wrong. Patel's refusal to answer didn't just frustrate Jayapal. It exposed the hidden boundaries of accountability. It revealed where transparency ends and protection begins. It showed how quickly justice can be warped when it starts brushing up against influence. And that is what made this moment so powerful. Not the shouting, not the political theater, but the moral clarity of a simple question being asked in a room full of people who suddenly didn't want it answered. And yet, for all the chaos, one thing became unmistakable. The survivors were the only ones in the story who had nothing to hide. They weren't protecting reputations. They weren't safeguarding political futures. They were telling the truth as they lived it. Their stories never changed. Their courage never wavered. Their demands were simple. Look at the evidence, acknowledge what happened, and pursue justice. But justice is hard to deliver when it forces powerful institutions to confront their own failures. That's why this hearing matters. Because it peeled back the polished surface of official statements and exposed the raw conflict underneath, between truth and loyalty, between survivors and systems, between what the public deserves to know and what certain individuals want to keep buried. The files may be sealed, but the questions aren't. And the longer officials refuse to answer them, the louder they'll echo. Jayapal's persistence made sure of that. Now the question falls to all of us. Why would someone refuse to say victims are credible if they had nothing to hide? Why would a 300-gigabyte cache of evidence suddenly be declared unworthy of release after months of promising sunlight? Why would survivors be ignored after being invited to come forward? These are not conspiracy questions. These are accountability questions. And the people avoiding them are telling their own story through their silence that if you believe the truth shouldn't depend on political convenience, if you believe survivors deserve to be heard, if you believe sunlight is stronger than secrecy, then don't let this moment disappear. Like this video, subscribe for more deep dive breakdowns, and share it so more people see what really unfolded in that room. Because the only thing stronger than a cover-up is a public that refuses to look away.